If you're coming to this video because you're in a process of grief, if you've recently lost someone that you love and you're feeling in the pits of despair, then this video may help you. I feel for you. I understand your feelings. You feel distraught, and we're going to talk about those feelings in this video, but I'm not going to promise that I can magic that all away. I'm not going to promise that I can fix all your problems. I'm not going to ask you for anything other than to offer this that you can explore, to help understand, and hopefully feel some solace in. The best thing you can do is talk to somebody you love, a stranger like the Samaritans. For the video, I'll whack up the Samaritans, and other resources are in the description below. It's best you talk to somebody when you feel these things. This video is going to help, but I can't magic it all better. What we will discover through looking at the grief cycle is that in time you may find a way to deal with your feelings. You probably will find a way to deal with your feelings, and hopefully it can be a healthy and constructive process. At the moment, it's just going to sound like words, because when you're at that heartbreak, grief moment, when you're in that crisis, I can't come through the screen and fix it for you. But we've got time together to talk through something that might help, and that's what I can offer. Okay, I think it's important I said that at the start of this process. I'm going to edit that to the start of the video, and I hope that if someone does engage with this content at a point of crisis, that it in some way helps. Hi, you're with Scott. This is True Binaural and ASMR, my channel. It's midnight. It's always midnight. This is your right ear and your left ear, because I'm just using a little mono mic. Tonight we're going to look at the 5 stages of grief. The 5 stages of grief from the Kubler Ross grief cycle. This is an interesting article because it not only talks about this Kubler Ross grief cycle and talks us through these different stages, but it also talks about the idea of the grief cycle itself and why it might not be cyclical in this way. It might not be a straight line, linear. It might be more abstract than that. So we'll look into that today. I recently lost someone. Recently lost 2 people. It's been heavy. My nan died on Boxing Day, which was sad. And my friend died in January, which was also sad. So I've suffered direct grief from the loss of loved people in my life in the last weeks and months. But I thought it was important that we didn't just talk about grief in the context of somebody has died. So I want to talk this grief cycle thing through from 3 perspectives today. You see, you can grieve and feel grief for the loss of many things. Could be a loved one. It could be someone still alive but they've left you. It could be that you grieve for a relationship. It could be you grieve for your childhood. You know, there are many things that you can feel grief about. So I'd like to talk this through. I said 3, didn't I? One was the death of a loved one. Another is the breakdown of a relationship. I thought we should talk about that. And I think the third one would be a loved person leaving, like a parent divorcing. Maybe it happened to me that my father left the family, you know, maybe something like that. And we can hopefully, trying to keep this calm demeanour so it's better for True Binaural. I was going to say I think it's something that we can hopefully all identify with, but I don't hope that you all identify with grief. I don't hope that for you. I understand that it's inevitable that we will all encounter grief. So I hope this video, this content, can give you some tools or a thought process to help. I hope that by examining the process, the natural process that we feel through grief, you can find some solace and some support in that. I'm not saying I'm going to stop it feeling bad. I can't stop it from feeling bad. Time, perspective, those are things that can heal in this context. But I'm not claiming that I'm going to magic your grief away. Hopefully, I'm really being serious here, that I hope that people who engage with this content about grief find a positive outcome from watching and engaging with it. It would devastate me if they left here feeling worse. So let's get on with it. Let's do the work and see if we can help somebody somewhere in the future. We're talking through the Kubler Ross grief cycle. And this is an image of the cycle. It's not a cycle. We're going to learn here that it's not even linear. So if while we're talking through these ideas, you think that it doesn't apply exactly to you, that's fine. Everyone's different, and everyone's going to feel these things in different ways, in different quantities, and at different times. And it might be short term, it might be long term. It might be you get over some of these things and go back to them. It might be that 2 or 3 come up at once. The Kubler Ross grief cycle talks about denial, anger, onto bargaining, depression and acceptance. A Swiss psychiatrist, Kubler Ross, first introduced her 5-stage grief model in her book On Death and Dying. Kubler Ross's model was based off her work with terminally ill patients and has received much criticism in the years since, mainly because people studying her model mistakenly believe this is the specific order in which people grieve, and that all people go through all stages. Kubler Ross now notes these stages are not linear, and some people may not experience any of them. Yet, still, others might undergo 2 stages rather than all 5, 1 stage, 3 stages, etc. It's now more readily known these 5 stages of grief are the most commonly observed and experienced by the grieving population. So what are they? They do put them in this linear order because it seems to make sense to some people in this order. But as we said, this can be in any order. Denial. Denial is the stage that can initially help you survive the loss. I'm just going to pull up to this image again. Denial, avoidance, confusion, elation, shock and fear. This is really strange. I mean, I want to qualify this again as well. I'd like to also qualify this as well by saying at the bottom of the graph there is this, you can't see me pointing, can you? There's this information and communication into emotional support, guidance and direction. There's this feeling of a direction that in the early stages of the cycle you're receiving the information, you move on to your emotional support networks, and eventually out into a guidance and a direction. There's that general concept is being applied to this, and that's what naturally will happen with time. Initially you receive information, then you respond to it, and then you move in a direction that you have time to think over. That's natural. But you don't have to go through these stages in this order. So it's interesting though, isn't it, to start with, that denial is the stage that can initially help you survive the loss. And it comes with these ideas of confusion, but also elation, shock and fear. Elation, seems strange, but I do know from personal experience that people respond differently to the initial news than you might expect. We're going to talk about it in 3 contexts. The loss of a loved one. When you hear that news, it might be from the hospital or another loved one. At first it might not seem real, and you might feel guilty that you don't feel sad enough, or that you're not not depressed and devastated as you should be, or you think you should be. It might be that you're in shock, and it might be that that shock causes other feelings. It might be a relief or a release from years of difficult nursing. It might be there are other feelings that come with the announcement of the death that you didn't expect to have, and that's not wrong, and it doesn't make you a bad person. In this early stage of denial, you can be confused, you can feel things you didn't expect to feel, and it might not be how you feel in the longer term. It's suggested here that this denial can help you survive that early shock. You might think life makes no sense, has no meaning, and is too overwhelming. You start to deny the news and in effect go numb. It's common in this stage to wonder how life will go on in this different state. You're in a state of shock because life as you once knew it has changed in an instant. If you were diagnosed with a deadly disease, you might believe the news is incorrect. A mistake must have occurred somewhere in the lab. They mixed your blood work up with someone else. If you receive news of the death of a loved one, perhaps you cling to a false hope that they identified the wrong person. In the denial stage, you're not living in actual reality, rather you're living in a preferable reality. Interestingly, it's shock and denial that helps you cope, and it says that it helps you to pace the ongoing feelings. So I want to talk about this in three contexts. The death of a loved one. There are some examples there. Perhaps you cling to a false hope that identified the wrong person. Perhaps you can't believe that they would have even been in that situation. Denial of a lost relationship. You might think there's no way that, this can be happening, or they can feel like this. Denial's difficult because it doesn't allow you to let go and move on. And in terms of somebody leaving your life, I suppose denial is harder to engage in if the truth is more physical and material. You might say it's not going to affect me though. My parents are still going to see me and I'm still going to see my parents. You might deny that you feel sad about it. You might deny many things, mightn't you? It's denial. That's the first of this cycle that's not a cycle, that can come up at any way and any time. Next is anger. Once you start to live in actual reality again, and not in preferable reality, anger might start to set in. This is a common stage to think, why me, and life's not fair. You might look to blame others for the cause of your grief, and may redirect your anger to close friends and family. You find it incomprehensible how something like this could happen to you. If you're strong in faith, you might start to question your beliefs in God. Where is God? Why didn't he protect me? Researchers and mental health professionals agree that this anger is a necessary stage of grief, and they encourage the anger to an extent. It's important to truly feel the anger. It's through that even though you might seem that you're in an endless cycle of anger, it will dissipate. And the more you truly feel it, the more quickly it will dissipate, and the more quickly you'll heal. It's not healthy to suppress your feelings of anger. It's a natural response. I'm finding this quite difficult because I'm telling people out there to get angry and to go and smash something. I'm not telling you to smash something up. Feeling the feeling, recognizing it, talking about it with someone, not being angry at them, you fucking this and that, but saying to someone that you care about and cares for you, I'm feeling angry about this, talking about it. These are ways that you can allow it to dissipate. Feeling anger and acting violently because you are angry are different things. So I really think we should clarify that. In everyday life, we're normally told to control our anger towards situations and toward others. True. When you experience a grief event, you might feel disconnected from reality and that you've no grounding anymore. Your life's shattered and there's nothing solid to hold on to. Think of anger as a strength to bind you to reality. To bind you to reality. Think of anger as a strength to bind you to reality. That's what it says here. You might feel deserted or abandoned during a grief event, that no one's there. You might feel you're alone in the world. You're not. The direction of anger towards something or somebody is what might bridge you back to reality and connect you to people again. It's a thing, it's something to grasp onto, and a natural step in healing. That's really interesting to me. I've never thought that anger should be promoted in that way. It's up here on the list. It includes frustration, irritation, and anxiety. I do understand that anger can be harnessed to fuel you, to be more, to do more, to fight for the things you believe in, to fight for the things that are right. Certainly, when loved ones die, you can feel angry. What if this, had been done differently? Sometimes people feel angry at themselves for not doing enough, or they might feel angry at the person who died, even and it might make you feel sad that you feel these feelings. Why have they left me? It's natural. It's all natural. It suggests here that you might feel angry against God, who, if you believe in God, is not someone that you naturally should feel angry towards. And that might give you conflicting feelings. The thing that you maybe take solace in is something that you're questioning and feeling angry about. But it's natural. It's part of this cycle. It's not a cycle. It just occurs in different abstract ways. It's natural. If you're talking about the breakup of a relationship, a breakdown of a relationship, you might feel angry at your ex. You might feel angry at your ex's new partner. You might feel angry at the friends of your ex. You might feel angry looking on Facebook. It's probably not, as we said, it's probably best not to react to that anger with violence and expressions of dissatisfaction into the world. It's probably best to talk about these feelings with friends and people that you can hope will understand your anger. That's probably a good way to go. And it's something to grasp onto, a natural step in healing. It can bring you back into the real world. So from that early shock and that initial loss of, it said grounding, I'm going to say tethering, that feeling that you're floating away into some unreality. Anger can bring you back into the real world, and it can give you some reason to grit your teeth and prepare to fight, which may be necessary to counter the feelings of grief and the process that you're going to go through. Sometimes we need to try and be strong. And whenever that happens, it has to come from within us. People can tell us to, people can support us and help us to, but ultimately, we've got to decide to hold on. Yeah. Next step. Bargaining. Bargaining's a good step, isn't it? Nice step. When something bad happens, have you ever caught yourself making a deal with God? Please, God, if you do this, I'll do that. If you can heal my husband, I'll be the best wife I can. And I'll never complain again about the thing that... This is bargaining. In a way, this stage is false hope. You might falsely make yourself believe that you can avoid the grief through a type of negotiation. You're so desperate to get your life back to how it was before the grief event, you're willing to make a major change in an attempt towards normality. If you change this, I'll change that. It's interesting, that is, you're willing to make a change if you're in the process of bargaining. That's a lovely concept to think about, isn't it? You might think bargaining is just, if I could do this, then I could change that, and you can't change some things. So maybe bargaining is just useless, but it's not, because it recognises that you in your life can make a change and that you want to make a change. So that's an important step. Guilt is a common wingman of bargaining. Nice to have some sexism in there. Guilt is a common companion of bargaining. This is when you endure the endless what-if statements. And if we're talking about grief, I'm sure you recognise these. What if I'd left the house 5 minutes sooner? What if I'd encouraged him to go to the doctor 6 months ago? The bargaining, yeah. And the guilt that associates it. What if I'd done something else? What if I had done this or that? These are what ifs, aren't they? They're not how to or moving forward. They're looking back and trying to work out and bargain. I think this is why this seems linear, because this feels like it can lead to the next step. Depression. Understanding that bargain cannot be made. Before you come to accept it, you have to feel it. Knowing this person is lost from your life. Should we just quickly go through bargaining with the other forms? Bargaining relationship. You might be texting that ex to say, hey, maybe if we just went back to the old restaurant that we used to go to, and maybe if I stopped going on about what if I'd done this, what if I'd done that, if only I'd told her her hair looked nicer, if only I'd been more conscientious, if only I hadn't been such a, you go through these things, I don't know, maybe you don't, maybe other people see it differently. What if she'd done this, what if she'd said, well, I don't know, yeah. But bargaining at the end of a relationship seems like a really common factor, and the difficulty with it is you can bargain with the other person. You can text them and say, maybe we could try this, what if we did that? And it might be that you're bargaining in your own mind to try and save yourself from the grief of the loss, but really maybe it's part of the loss. Bargaining with a parent to try and, certainly young children who don't understand the adult nature of the feelings that are taking place during a divorce, might just simply bargain with an adult leaving the family. Please, what if I did this? Maybe they might not have left. And that's really sad as well, because it's not something that can be answered in the psyche of the young person until later in life. But it's not something you've done. It's not something that you could what if your way around. It's not your fault. That's something that's important to understand. And that bargaining, it says here that guilt is a common wingman of bargaining, a common companion of bargaining, because it's often something that ends up being your fault when you try and work it out. You say, what if I'd done this, what if I'd done that? Ultimately, what if what if it hadn't been my fault? It might not be your fault. What if you'd done all that? It might still have happened. Who knows? You don't. This is part of bargaining. This is an abstract concept, and these things can come up at any time during your grief. They can come up years later. They don't have to happen in this order, and we're aiming to move on to the final outcome of acceptance. But it doesn't mean that even after you've accepted something, you don't still feel some what if, some bargaining, some depression, some anger. It doesn't mean that this is the same for everyone. It's okay to deal with things the way that you feel most comfortable to deal with them. Yeah. Depression. Depression is a commonly accepted form of grief. In fact, most people associate depression immediately with grief, as it is a present emotion. It represents the emptiness we feel when we're living in reality and realise the person or situation is gone or over. In this stage, you might withdraw from life, feel numb, live in a fog, and not want to get out of bed. The world might seem too much and too overwhelming. You don't feel like talking and experience feelings of hopelessness. You might even experience suicidal thoughts, thinking, what's the point in going on? It doesn't offer here in this statement any help. It doesn't offer any help, and I'm going to offer some help. There's links in the description below in the video that will be produced, and you can find the Samaritans. You can search Mind online. There are people you can talk to that are strangers that can help with your depression. It might be you go down a therapy road. It might be that you find your doctor can offer you some medication. It's definitely worth talking to a doctor. If you're in the throes of some extreme depression now, it's definitely worth checking out Mind or calling the Samaritans. Talking to somebody is really, really helpful. What's the point in going on, right? If you're watching this video, you are taking one more step. You are experiencing life for 10 more seconds. You are pushing ahead for that little bit more. You're here, we're together, we're doing this. Yeah, we're going on. What's the point in going on is there's definitely more to be said for being here and pushing on and fighting through it than there is for conceding and not being able to experience anything else in the future. There's more to be said for having more experience, and I honestly believe this because I've felt it. Even if that experience is horrible in these stages, even if you feel like today, tomorrow, the next day are just are bad, you're not going to be able to feel anything good unless you push through them. Even if it's bad, it's better than nothing. And it provides the opportunity for hope, because time will pass, things will pass, everything will pass eventually, and we're just going to ride this through together. 10 more seconds. If you've been listening to that, you've been listening to it for a minute, so you can do a minute, you can do 10 seconds. Together we can do 20. We can do 20 minutes, we can do an hour. And if you can just do an hour, if you can just fight that, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, if you can hold on, I'm doing these lines in the wrong order, but if you can hold on if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, when there's nothing else inside you except the will that says, hold on. We're holding on. That can be enough, can't it? What's the point in going on? Is to hold on. That's the point. Keep holding my hand and pushing on. I'm not going to be able to answer all of the mysteries of the universe in a little video about depression and grief, but I can promise you it's worth holding on, and that we're doing it. We're holding on. Talk to friends, find joys, engage in mindfulness. We will find a point to go on together. Acceptance. The last stage of grief identified by Kubler Ross is acceptance. Not in the sense that I'm okay, my husband died. Rather, my husband died, but this is going to be okay. There's a very important distinction there. You're going to accept things for what they are and learn to deal with the way they are in the future. In this stage, your emotions may begin to stabilise. You may re-enter reality. You come to terms with the fact that the new reality is that your partner's never coming back, or that your loved one is never coming back, that you don't get to see them again. You have to accept that things you wanted to say cannot be said. And like I said, in the current climate, I have to accept that there are 120,000 other families feeling the same things as I'm feeling. And we've all got to accept, these things are what they are, and to try and push forward together for the best outcome together. if you're dealing with the breakdown of a relationship, this one is the hardest one to come to, with all the others in the way, all the bargaining, all the texting, all the, seeing them at the club with their new partner, or maybe if we just went to the cinema together like we used to, all that acceptance is hard to get to. But if you can have a clean break, if you can decide to accept the things that have been said between you in the relationship to come to the breakup, acceptance is probably one of the most important. If your parents have divorced and you're not seeing one of your parents as often as you would like to, the going over that problem, that feeling, can be as brutal day in, day out as the day they leave, until you come to accept it and try and learn to live in the new normal. The term that we've heard recently, haven't we, the new normal. You may come to terms with the fact the new reality is that your partner's not coming back, or that you're going to succumb to your illness and die soon, and you're okay with that. It's not a good thing, but it's something that you can live with. It's definitely a time of adjustment and readjustment. There are good days and there are bad days, and then there are good days again, and then there are bad days again, and then there are good days again. It's a cycle, it's a process, isn't it? In this stage, it does not mean you'll never have another bad day. It doesn't mean that you're not going to break down and cry and be uncontrollably sad. But when you get to acceptance, the good days start to outnumber the bad days. I remember a breakdown of a relationship in my life where I thought to myself, there's never going to be a time that I don't think of this person when I wake and when I sleep and all the hours in between. And I'm thinking of them now that I'm saying it, but they're not still in my phone, and I don't still observe their birthday. Things just go by the way, and I don't finish watching a film and think, I wonder what she would have thought of it. I just live my life now, and occasionally I can allow myself a bit of sadness over those old days. But the good days tend to outnumber the bad days in that context. In this stage, the fog might lift and you start to engage with friends again. And I think this is important when you talk about this in depression, is that I don't think in depression you should wait for this stage before you engage with friends again. It might even be really hard to be a depressed person and engage with friends. It might be that some friends don't get it. It might be that some friends aren't really friends. It might be that some friends end up making you feel more depressed at times. But that process of engaging with people, is a very important part of all of this. And I'm not sure it's easy to climb these mountains alone. I'm not sure you have to. Engaging with friends, engaging with people, even if they're not friends. Generally, a lot of people, can be mean and negative, can't they? But generally, a lot of people can be nice and kind as well, can't they? So engaging with strangers can even be as wholesome as engaging with friends, certainly when they're kind. But engaging with people is important, and you don't have to wait till acceptance. You can use it as part of grief in all the stages. Probably most important to do so. Don't suffer these things alone. Don't just listen to me, turn off the thing and never say anything about it. Even if it's something as simple as saying to your friend, I watched this video about grief the other day, what do you think about these ideas? I might be feeling this. Share my video. I'm joking. I am joking. I shouldn't joke. I'm not joking because we're trying to be serious. But yeah, I'm not trying to capitalise on your grief. I just hope that by sharing some of this with you, I can help, and maybe you'll share some of your feelings with somebody else, and that between us all, every little snowflake contributes to the avalanche. It's the way social change works. Every little thing contributes. So I hope that we can do some good together. Your grief symptoms may present themselves physically, socially, or spiritually, and some of the most common symptoms of grief are presented below. Let's just talk about these then. Crying. Been there, done that. Got the red eyes and the puffy eyes to show for it. Headaches. Crying's an obvious one, isn't it? We know about crying. If you're crying, you probably feel sad. But sometimes you can cry and you don't know why you feel so sad. Sometimes it's worth letting that happen and exploring the feelings. Maybe listen to a sad song and letting it wash over you and play its way out. Crying shouldn't be reserved for times when you're alone, held back until you can let it come out. Crying should just happen naturally, if it's happening naturally. And I know you can sometimes feel like if you cry you will never stop, but believe me, everything's a process, and if you do allow yourself to feel these things, like I say, sometimes a song can help, because when the song's finished it's time to dry your eyes and think about the next thing. But crying. Headaches can be a symptom of grief. Difficulty sleeping, certainly, especially when you're thinking about all these things. Go and check out my videos on my ASMR channel that help you sleep. Please, if I could just do this without making jokes. Questioning the purpose of life. Questioning your spiritual beliefs. Feelings of detachment. Isolation from friends and family. That's a tough one. That is a tough one, because it's isolation. It's the opposite of that that's going to help you to come through this. Abnormal behaviour, worry, anxiety, frustration, guilt, fatigue, being tired, anger, a loss of appetite, aches and pains and stress. And our last video we talked about stress through the context of exams. There's that thought triangle that we talked about in the video before. I say video, upload, stream, the last episode. These things that cause you physical symptoms can then cause you to feel differently and to think differently, and those things can cause you to feel and think. It's a triangle, it works, interplays. So these things are going to affect the way you think and the way you feel, probably in a negative way. So it's helpful to recognise if you're feeling any of these things that are listed, that they may be because of the grief, a part of the grief, a natural process, and to try and to do things that are going to help you to combat these feelings. Eating well is impossible when you're grieving. It's impossible, isn't it? You don't want to eat, but even if it's just like a half a bite of a chocolate bar and a vegan nut bar or something little attempts, pushing in the right direction. Treatment of grief. The prescription, this is important now, isn't it? The treatment, how are we going to get through this? We've talked about it. We're going to talk to people. We're going to hold on to the things that we hold most dear, and holding on is going to help us to hold on for another 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We're going to get through to the next thing. We're going to start to see time in shorter but then longer sections the next day, the next week. We're going to accept that everything's a process and that our place in the process is transient. We're going to look at things differently in time. We're going to try and be good to ourselves. We're going to try and heal. We're going to try and stay healthy. We're going to talk to friends. We're going to talk to family. We're going to talk to people and attempt to engage in positive actions in the world. I didn't say much about that, but I also think that's important. You might feel bad in yourself, but if you can try and help someone else, that process might help you to heal. Doing good things in the world is better than doing nothing or taking yourself out of it completely. And even if you're feeling bad, and even if it's hard, the process of trying to do it is valuable. It's valuable. So you go and you get that done. I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing. Doing it again. Can't help it. It's valuable. The prescription, this is what they've got to say from Psychom. So maybe Psychom's got a different approach to me. We'll find out. The prescription of medication and engagement in counselling have been the most common methods of targeting grief. Initially, your doctor may prescribe you medications to help you function more fully. Some doctors choose not to prescribe medications because they're doing you a disservice in the grieving process. That means that if you don't truly experience the grief, then maybe you can't deal with it. We've all got different ideas and opinions. I'm not going to tell you whether medication is right for you. I'm just going to advise that you talk to a doctor, because it may be that some of these things help you to get through those first early stages that are so difficult, and help you to move through into a place where thinking about grief and your life is more comfortable. That's possible. It's up to the doctor and it's up to you. Okay? Counselling is a more solid approach towards grief. Support groups, individual counselling. It's certainly beneficial, it says here, when grief is creating an obstacle in your daily life, that you have trouble functioning and you need some support to get back on track, that counselling might be right for that. It in no way cures you of your loss. Instead, it provides you with coping strategies to help you deal with your grief in an effective way. The Kubler Ross model is a tried and true, I like that. The Kubler Ross model is a tried and true guideline, but there's no right or wrong way to work through your grief. It's normal that in your personal... you can probably read this better than me. It's normal that your personal experience may vary as you work through the grieving process. Yeah, we like this, don't we? This is talking sense. If you or a loved one is having a hard time coping with grief, seek treatment from a health professional or mental health provider. Call a doctor right away. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, I'd say call the Samaritans, call somebody. Feelings of detachment for more than 2 weeks, or you experience a sudden change in behaviour, or you believe you're suffering from depression. Easier said than done. Easier said than done. But you're here, you're listening to this, you're thinking about these things. It might be really hard to talk to somebody. It might be that you're not at that crisis edge, But in the next few days, in the coming weeks, there'll be opportunities for you to engage and share and talk. I mean, Twitch is a great opportunity, isn't it? There'll be opportunities. Don't shy back. Don't hold back from them. If it pops into your head at some point that, even if it's the strange lady who you bump into when you walk your dog, or, you can talk to people. So now I'm going to just sign off for the True Binaural video. We've done grief. We've covered it. As you will have seen, as I promised at the start of the video, this has not fixed your grief. This has not made the world better in immeasurable ways. But hopefully it's offered you a start point, something to think about and move on from. Hopefully you feel that some of the feelings you have are not alien, they're not wrong. Hopefully you understand a little more about how you feel and why it's natural that you should feel like that, and that you can potentially... All I hope for is, if someone's in crisis, they found this video, they've watched, they've listened, they've thought about the things, all I hope for is that we've established like a pin in the map, a flag on the moon, something that says we're here, and something that can be built on and worked towards. And that when they're in these crises moments, when you're having these difficult times, that you can say to yourself, oh no, but I've got that pin in my map, I've got the will to hold on, and I can do another day, I can do another 10 minutes, I am doing another 10 minutes, even if you have to come back and watch this again to remind you that you can do this. These things are important. So hopefully we've created that here. Hopefully this has created that flag in a map, a pin that we can establish and move on from. So you be good, my little podcast. You stay strong, you do another hour, you watch another video, you get through another night, you have another difficult day, you eat something, you take a shower, you go again. And we're not giving up. And I'll be here every Monday, Mental Health Monday, 8 p.m. GMT, every Monday. So that's Mental Health Monday. You be a good little podcast. We'll call that cut. Yeah, for the true binaural channel, we'll say cut. It goes that way around, really, doesn't it?